From the BBC World Service, in association with ABC and All India Radio, this is Stumped.
Hello and welcome to Stumped, your intercontinental hit of news, features and debate from the quirky world of cricket. I'm Alison Mitchell in London, the city that staged the action-packed opening game of the 2019 Men's Cricket World Cup. I have to say that day one of the tournament, I opened my front door and I saw a couple of lads walking down the road wearing pale blue retro England shirts from the 1992 World Cup, and I thought, yes, here we go, the tournament starts now. Big screens have been set up around the country. The World Cup vibe is well and truly here, which means matches will be won and lost, some hearts will be broken, and some heroes will be made, more of which coming up.
Well, one way or the other is likely to be blue. I'm Charu Sharma for All India Radio, back in Bangalore in the studio after 2 weeks of doing the rather successful Mumbai T20 League. And just how popular is the game in India? Well, the Mumbai T20 final saw a jam-packed Wankhede Stadium for a local T20 final. Would you believe it? Quite remarkable. Of course, all eyes now on the World Cup, where India showed a few worrying chinks in their armour against New Zealand in their first warm-up game.
We'll have to see how they go, and I'm glad to say we have a new voice to welcome to Stumped as well, because sitting next to me representing ABC Australia is...
Hello, I'm Geoff Lemon, doing the difficult job of filling in for Jim Maxwell until he gets here towards the back end of the tournament, so looking forward to the next few weeks.
Doing a good job of filling in for him so far. Brilliant way to introduce yourself. Geoff, good to see you. So, 10 teams, 48 matches. And what a better way for the hosts to start than with victory in their opening game and a magic moment or two along the way. The question is, though, who will lift the trophy on the 14th of July? Can England live up to the expectation of being the tournament favourites, aiming to win the trophy for the very first time? They're the number one team in the world at the moment, and they began this cricketing extravaganza against South Africa on Thursday, and this is how the opening match unfolded.
Was it caught behind, in fact?
No. Wow.
Bairstow's out first ball, and Tahir's off on one of his celebrations, and you have to say that already, whatever happens from here, South Africa's little brainwave here of starting with the wrist spinner has paid off. It was around about the off stump, and de Kock's taken the catch, and Bairstow's out first ball.
Pulled by Morgan into space, might have enough on it to run all the way to the boundary. He does, and he raises his bat towards the dressing room pointedly as he reaches his half century.
Giri over the wicket towards Butler, who pulls it onto his stumps. He's got a bottom edge, and it's through him.
That is a massive moment for South Africa, massive. Giri around the wicket, bowls short, reverse sweep, caught.
And Stokes is out for 89, and England finish their innings on 311 for 8.
Pitlaquire on strike, and he's facing Adil Rashid. He sweeps in the air and straight towards Stokes, who takes an incredible one-handed catch. Unbelievable, jumping in the air and somehow plucking it out of nowhere.
Stokes approaches, and Tahir edges it, caught and gone, and the first victory for England has been completed.
Well, there you have it. I tell you what, the first thing to talk about on the back of that match has to be the catch. Ben Stokes. I mean, Geoff, how incredible a moment was that to kickstart the World Cup with a moment that was already gone viral across social media?
One of those moments where I was so glad to be there watching it live. I had one of those with Ben Stokes when Carlos Brathwaite was hitting him for 4 sixes in India in 2016, but this was a much more positive one for Ben Stokes. While that catch was in the air, I thought it was out and then not out. I changed my mind about 4 times, and eventually I settled on it's going to miss him, and then somehow he telescopically extends his arm while facing away from the ball. He's not even looking at it and catches it backhanded one hand before landing inside the rope. It is absolutely ridiculous.
That is a lot of thoughts to go through your head in 2.55 seconds, because that's apparently how long Stokes had to react. Charu, from ball off the bat to pouching it in his hand, backhanded, as Geoff described.
Well, I wonder how many times Ben Stokes thought about it while the ball was coming towards him, saying, am I there or am I not? But, taking nothing away from Stokes, because it was an incredible, crazy acrobatic catch. It takes me back to 1996 when India were touring South Africa, and a very similar catch was taken when Sachin was going crazy. He was on 169 at Cape Town, and he clipped one to, I think, deep fine, and Adam Barker leapt up like, he was on a trampoline or something and picked it off one-handed pretty much the same way. Now, Sachin just stood there thinking about taking a run or just waiting for the boundary, and he stood there for 5-10 seconds just wondering, shaking his head, saying, what Why? How? Not supposed to happen. And I have no doubt that in this case, too, the batsman said that is not supposed to happen.
In terms of the match itself, though, England have answered a few questions, Geoff, have they not, about, responding to tricky situations, setting a total on a pitch that wasn't perhaps as pacey as they thought it might be?
I think two key things for England out of that. One is that they didn't bat that well and they still made 300 plus. No one really dominated. Jos Buttler didn't make a big score, the wicket in the first over. A lot of things went against them and they were still able to cobble together some 50s and then get to a very competitive score. And secondly, Jofra Archer being so impressive. I mean, coming into this squad, there would have been a lot of pressure on him. He would have felt a bit awkward about taking someone else's spot at the last minute, and he's immediately shown why he's here.
Yeah, were you similarly impressed, Charu, with the way England managed to sort of recover in a sense, particularly losing Johnny Bairstow out first ball to Imran Tahir, opening the bowling with some leg spin?
Yeah, well, obviously it threw England off just a bit. So that was the only negative, if you can call it that, Bairstow going so early. But we know he's a class act and everybody has a right to get out on zero or early once in a while. But, I think all the rest of the top order contributed. And you might not, everybody's getting a little greedy now about the 350, 400 totals, but 300 and some, that's okay. And all the right people did the right job. All the top order batsmen, barring Bairstow, got runs. And there was no panic there. At no stage did I think that England was ever out of control. And to offset what Bairstow couldn't do, of course, was Jofra Archer. So I think that's a huge plus for England because he was looking terrific. And Ben Stokes, well, he had a terrific match. And, what's the buzzword these days? The three-dimensional players, those who can bat, bowl and field really well, will, of course, be always contributing. But I think that was a very efficient clinical performance by England. Now, you guys might be a little more critical. I think they showed why they are favourites and they showed why South Africa are not favoured to be in the Final Four. England were pretty complete in every department. South Africa played just as well as they could have. England were just that much better.
Well, let's turn our attention to this weekend's fixtures because many are predicting New Zealand to reach the last four of the tournament, our very own Jim Maxwell being one of those. And, of course, they were runners-up 4 years ago. Now, they take on Sri Lanka in their opening game in Cardiff, which I'm going to be there for, so I'm very excited about that one. New Zealand, then, Geoff, number 4 in the world, but they're going to be expecting to start with a win against Sri Lanka, aren't they?
They should. I mean, Sri Lanka have been a bit of a rebel in ODI cricket in recent times, sadly. But what keeps striking me at this World Cup is how many people keep saying, "Oh, New Zealand, they're a dark horse." They're not a dark horse. They've made every semi-final basically in the history of the sport. They've been making semi-finals since the Stone Age. They have a core of good players. They made the final last time around. What's dark or horse-like about that? There's nothing shadowy or equine about that arrangement.
Trent Boult, leading wicket taker over the last 4 years in ODIs, and Martin Gupta was the leading scorer in 2015. They've got a bit of a question to answer, though, haven't they, about who will open the batting alongside Martin Gupta?
Yeah, New Zealand don't have much going wrong, but I would really like to mention that their fast bowling unit, that's the key. You mentioned Boult. Let's go on to Southee as well and a couple others. They, I think, will utilize English conditions probably the best out of most other teams because they have what it takes. It's just, the batting will be up and down every once in a while. Everybody's batting up and down, but they are a very good unit. And like Australia and perhaps England and South Africa, they field really well. So I don't think we give enough credit to the fact that there are some teams which are just so tough in the field. They take the odd terrific catch, they affect run-outs, and they squeeze the opposition into scoring a lot less than the opposition is worth.
Geoff, what do you admire most about Boult and Southee?
I think just the clarity with Trent Boult. Thinking about his performance in the World Cup in 2015 is one of my favourite cricket memories. I just go back to that sometimes because that casual, subtle swing, the way that he was able to match Mitchell Starc despite being about 10 k's an hour slower, he was never seduced by thinking, I have to compete with this guy, this other swinging left armer at his level. He was saying, I'll take just as many wickets doing it my way, and being a bit less headline, a bit more subtle, but always having such control and being able to even bowl 10 overs in a row sometimes when McCullum would just keep him on and Boult would just push through that entire spell.
Comes back to bowling in partnerships, Charu, doesn't it?
Without question, and especially when you have a quick left armer and a quick right hand fast bowler, it makes a very big difference because, I mean, much as you might well, we all know that batsmen have played thousands of hours of each kind of bowler, but I think lefty seamers, and especially if they swing the ball and are as accurate and steam in so quickly as Boult does, will always trouble batsmen, because most batsmen tend to be right-handed. My contention here is that Tim Southee is pretty steady, but in every which way, I think Boult will cause more trouble for most of the right-handed batsmen.
From the BBC World Service, this is Stumped on ABC and All India Radio.
Jim, it's never one's play down Australia's chances. Let's stick with the defending champions, Australia, because they begin their World Cup campaign on Saturday against Afghanistan in Bristol. Geoff, you're going to be at that one. And the 5 times winners, as the Aussies are going to have some extra attention on them, of course, with the return of David Warner and Steve Smith. And they played the warm-up matches. Steve Smith with a century against England to boot. But this is the real stage now, isn't it? Could this be for them the Redemption World Cup?
This is the real quiz. Redemption stories are so overcooked, aren't they? I mean, all you have to do is come back and be good at your sport, and apparently you're redeemed, rather than actually addressing the thing that you did wrong in the first place. So maybe behaviour might be more the focus than what happens on the field, or it should be. It probably won't be. This Australian side, I think, have some issues that people haven't really worked out. They've got a weird squad. They don't have a backup all-rounder. Marcus Stoinis has been struggling a lot with the bat, and there's nobody to replace him who can actually act as the 5th bowler in that squad. They picked 3 openers who can't bat anywhere else: Warner, Finch, Khawaja. If you push Khawaja into the middle order, you have 3 of the same player in the middle order in Khawaja, Smith, Marsh. And they're all accumulators who could make 100 off maybe 90 balls, but they're not those really big hitters who can come in and make 80 off 40 at the end and turn a 280 into a 350. So they've got one explosive batsman in Glenn Maxwell who's in form, one explosive batsman in Marcus Stoinis who's very much out of form. And that's it in terms of pushing towards a really big score. They've got a great bowling attack, so they might be able to defend 280 half the time, but they're not necessarily going to be able to do that against the bigger hitting sides.
Well, the behaviour you mentioned, of course, behaviour of players is going to be one thing. Behaviour of the crowd, perhaps another. And interesting to listen to former Australia pace bowler Brett Lee speaking to the BBC this week. He was asked just how Steve Smith and David Warner might handle the jibes that they will likely face from the crowds over here.
Yes, they will cop it, and they know they will cop it. They've been preparing for 12 months, not about copying it, but about getting back and playing cricket. And that's just the sort of, I guess, the sidetrack of what's happened. They have to deal with it, of course, but at the end of the day, they're out there playing for their country. They're proud again. There's a few boos, and look, you can take it with a grain of salt. That's what happens over here in England, but you have to have thick skin to be a cricketer.
Thick skin, indeed. Charu, is it poor sportsmanship from the crowd? Is it pantomime? Does it add to the entertainment? What do you reckon?
Well, just because how big this whole problem with Warner and Smith got, I think the crowd sort of feels that they must have something to say about it, but it's going to be short-lived. That's my sense, because public memory is a touch short, and especially when Warner and Smith get to the runs, as we know they will, then this whole heckling thing is just going to die a natural death.
So they belong back on a cricket field, Geoff, although the coach is hoping that they won't get booed anymore.
Well, yeah, I thought that was a little bit politically not the smartest move to come out and say that. You'd kind of just want to invite people to bring it on if that's what they want to do. If
that's sort of Steve Smith's take, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Everyone has their opinion, they're entitled to that, and I'll ignore it.
Exactly, and it's not really a big deal in the end. It'll die out of its own accord, but if you do push back against it, that's when crowds tend to come back.
What about Afghanistan then? They are a country who fascinate, who can delight. We've charted their remarkable journey before here on Stumped, from a war-torn country where cricket was banned by the Taliban to winning World Cricket League Division 5, making it to the World T20 in 2010, the first World Cup in 2015, Test status, and now playing in a World Cup for a second time. Charu, they're tipped to cause an upset or two here or there. I kind of fancy their chances of doing so as well.
Well, they are my favourite team. I make no bones about that. Maybe because I did their Afghanistan Premier League, I got to know these guys a little better. But they are wonderful people. And just the strength and the passion and the enthusiasm with which they play their cricket, the attitude, it's all positive. They never get down on themselves. But do they have it in the 50-over game? And I, again, beg everybody's pardon who's an Afghanistan fan, including myself, that they're terrific in a T20 game. I think they've got those numbers sorted out. It's only in the fast bowling department that they don't have world-class bowlers. But of course, Rashid Khan, Mohammad Nabi particularly, is still a fabulous all-rounder. The off-spin and at times seam-up bowling that he comes up with can take apart even the best. And of course, we know about Rashid. But, barring an upset or two, I don't think in a 50-over game they're going to consistently get to that 300 mark.
Well, let's finish up with some thoughts on the teams who are yet to play their opening match. One of those being India. They'll take on South Africa on Wednesday, which seems like an age away, Charu. It's going to be quite a long wait by the time they take the field.
Yeah, well, I don't know who the advantage will go to. I think maybe South Africa, because they'll be battle ready in English conditions by then, because they would have played any number of matches in the World Cup and India would only be beginning. So there could be sort of starting nerves for India, I think. And strangely, the way the schedule pans out, India are playing all their tough teams first, and then, if I may be allowed to say so, the weaker teams later on. So it's a trial by fire for India for sure. And the way, I keep talking about the fast bowlers. So Lungi Ngidi and Rabada are the ones that the Indians need to be really careful about, because they are a very good batting unit, India, but the openers haven't really done much, have they, so far? So Rohit Sharma and our lefty need to get going in the very first match straight away. They need to hit the ground running, but they do have the personnel to claw their way back into the match in case something goes wrong at the top. I think the India-Pakistan match, everybody's sort of up for that, but that's much later. I think we'll get a pretty good indication of where India headed in the World Cup in the couple of matches prior to that, and nothing more important than the opener against South Africa. I do think India are a better team on paper and otherwise. It's just that they haven't had a fantastic match so far. The English conditions are not quite... they'll take longer for India to get used to rather than South Africa. So, yeah, it's a potentially dangerous opening match.
Well, there's a lot of excitement to come. We know that World Cups will always throw up some unexpected stories. So we'll be following it all for you here on Stumped. Geoff will be with us as well. Charu will be joining us in the country as well in due course. So thanks to both of those, Charu Sharma and Geoff Lemon. Make sure you enjoy the start of the Men's World Cup and join us again next time on Stumped. Bye for now.
Stumped is a BBC sport production for the BBC World Service in association with the Australian Broadcasting Corporation and All India Radio.